It was, I think, your countryman, Peter, who said, and that was Patrick Dodson, that our people talk in pictures. So today I want to talk through pictures rather than read a paper. I hope you find it engaging, stimulating, and at the end that we can have a conversation with questions, comments, arguments from you. But, of course, as is our custom, I begin by acknowledging the Ngunnawal people, elders, past, present and emerging. And I want to take that theme, past, present and emerging, and talk about it in the context of our identity, not only as First Nations people, but a country more broadly. By way of introduction, I'm going to immediately go to two clips. And thank you to Ben, he's my driver here. The first is a story from country. Okay, Ben.
I'd just like to talk about some traditional knowledge that was handed down to most of us Indigenous fellows in this area, and it's the emu in the sky. Around April, May every year, the emu will appear in the Milky Way. Just underneath the Southern Cross, you'll see a dark spot, a rounded dark spot. That's the head of the emu. In front of him, of course, is his beak. And as we follow it down, you can see his neck in the dark spots of the Milky Way. Comes right down to his body. You can see his legs. And you can see a couple of eggs underneath. At that certain time of year, it's the time for us to go out and collect emu eggs. We go out, of course, into the bush, always leaving some eggs for next year and for the generations to keep going. They only last up until early June. Anytime after early June they start getting chicks in them. But before that, from April, May, you're pretty right to go gather.
This story tells us something in education, doesn't it? It tells us something in terms of ANU. What you're witnessing is a combination of law and science. Science from the First Nations perspective. I want to share another story. The first one came from my countryman, Ben Flick. The second one comes from one of my younger brothers.
G'day, my name's Greg Dreise. I'm a teacher at Federal State School here on the wonderful Sunshine Coast. So I'm one of 7 teachers in the family. Not all of us are still in the classroom, but we're all very much education based. 21 years of teaching this year, so time flies, but I luckily can say it's all been fun. Luckily teaching has taken me all over Queensland and parts of the world as well, so I love the variety. I think that's the biggest thing that attracted me to being a teacher is I do something different every day. All the things that I've grown up passionate about, I think they're all here in my job, so we have lots and lots of fun. This afternoon we'll be going out pushing around a push cart. Ever since I was a kid, I've grown up with old Chevys. Every time I go for a cruise in my 29 Chevy, I smile and think of Mum and Dad. My mum is Lila Knox, so g'day to all the Knox people out there in Kamilaroi country, and the Simpsons from the Uralaray people. She grew up in a time where she didn't have the opportunity to get off to university and even the school times have definitely changed, and Australia has really opened their arms to embrace our wonderful culture we've got. So I want to take my time here in my profession and my time in life to promote the wonderful culture we have from back home. And I just love the fact that kids are sponges to Aboriginal culture. They love it. So as soon as I've got boomerangs out or playing my didge or yarning and talking old stories, the kids love it. But that's the bit I love. So I think if there's anyone out there that just loves variety and loves jumping in there and finding out new things, then this is a job for you. Jump on in. My name's Greg Dreise and I'm a proud Murray teacher.
Thanks, Ben. I won't show any more of Greg because Brian will start to think he chose the wrong brother. Greg referred to our mother, and our mother's a constant reminder of past, and I've flipped this, emerging. Even in her later years, she is still emerging, and thankfully for us, she is still present. Today, I want to talk about Australian identity, future policy making in this space, and CAPA and our vision over the next number of years. As you see, I'm a Tony, so I thought Q&A was a natural fit. And I get the right to say, well, that's a statement, and you can sit down. But anyhow, let's start. As researchers, and Australians more generally, are we asking the right questions? There are those that argue in the research community that the backbone of any research is the research question. There will be others that will debate that, but I see a lot of logic in that. What are we asking? To illustrate this point, I want to start with a quirky metaphor and then get into a more serious yarn. You're familiar with this fella? And I'm sure there are people in this audience who secretly play it. And to put you out of your misery, so, of course we ask, where's Wally? But are we asking this? Are we asking this? That is a quirky way of asking ourselves, are we asking the right questions? So let's move to the serious. Who is Australia? Other than getting some inspiration from, what's his name, Borat, who asked in a very comedic way, who is America? I don't intend to follow that format. Let me put you out of your misery. And no, Gareth is not that actor. What's his name? Thank you. And the English teachers, of course, will tell me, oh, well, you're grammatically incorrect, Tony. It's not who is Australia, but hold your rifle. To my way of thinking, the quick answer is that there are so many positives, including within our communities, of resilience and strength. And we hear this. We hear people arguing that we've got to change the discourse to strength-based thinking. I totally get that. But there is massive unfinished business in this country. There are gross injustices in this country. And borrowing from the thoughts of Sen, there are deprivations of capabilities because we're not bringing the best out in all of us. So after Saturday's election, one can pause and reflect about how confident we know each other, how confident we know our country. The polls got it wrong. And obviously there are implications and ramifications for our people and the discourse around our people. So who are we? Are we that? Are we some of that? Are we all of it? Are we none of it? I suppose it depends whose eyes you're looking through. There lies the answer to who is Australia. Let's put the nation in a mirror. What do we see? Who do we see? Scott Morrison might see this person. He helped create it. He helped create a narrative about Australia. Where the bloody hell are you? Are we this nation, kind of embodied in Jessica? I would hope so. Do we run the risk of becoming increasingly this country? The answer probably lies in if we realise a state can be a state of mind. So what's our minds? Often we see that those who are keen and brave enough to challenge Australia and its projection and its orthodoxy and its current course, they get labelled as being unpatriotic. They get challenged when they challenge this nation's anthem. We have a romantic notion of the country. And of course it's a beautiful country. But we've had our voices saying the same thing for many decades now and not being listened to. I argue that we can love this country by both being content with it and discontent with it. There's Wild providing some wisdom. We can both defend and challenge the country at the same time. All we need to do is draw on the wisdom of some and the misthinking of others. I'll let you decide where you think those voices are as you look at that. Jefferson deliberately chose not to follow, I think it was Virginia, which had its constitution before the United States. And the Virginian constitution talked about life, liberty and property. And it was Jefferson who changed that and challenged that to the pursuit of happiness and people's right to it. I want to switch gear here now. You might be familiar with Simon Sinek. And this I thought was a gift. When I first heard, the golden circle, I thought that was a tin of pineapple. But he came up with this golden circle thinking, and what we tend to do, particularly in the research community and the public policy community, we start out wide with what, and then we go to how, because we want to fix things, we want to solve things. And Sinek challenges us to start with the why, moral purpose. That's why I thought, who is Australia? Why is Australia? What's our moral purpose? The easier questions are, where is Australia? And we can rely on the geographers to tell us that. What is Australia? A whole range of disciplines can tell us that as of 7 a.m. this morning, we ticked over to 25,382,121 Australians. We know we're the oldest, flattest and driest inhabited country on earth. We know we're the home of the oldest continuing civilisations on earth. We still don't know whether this place was settled or invaded. If we knew that, we would settle on a set of words for our Australian curriculum and teach our children the truth, and we're not. It's easier to say how we're faring. There are a whole range of indicators, and we do a lot of work at ANU in answering this question. But I think too often we overlook our inner philosopher to ask the more complex questions. Who are we and why are we? In this country, where we comprise 2.5 of the population, we comprise 10 times the rate in terms of jail. We have more of our kids going to jail than uni. Half of our juvenile justice systems in this country are filled with our young people. In one juvenile justice centre alone, over 90% of those children assessed were seen to have cognitive development delay. We have 8 times more likelihood for our children to be in child protection. Our jail rates have doubled since Rick-a-Dick. And of course here we're talking more than numbers. We've had the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People. We signed up to it in about 2009 under Kevin Rudd. Is it being honoured? It can't be honoured if no one knows about it. We're talking more than numbers, we're talking people. I argue we're a diminished nation because we ignore the tale of our people's collective despair. To turn this around in terms of public policy, we need to revisit, in my mind, first principles in order to make better public policy, to give people stronger agency, to support rights-based thinking and action, and pursue, as the Keating government had started, a major social justice investment package. So what are the roadblocks to reconciliation? It's a venture now that's 30 years old, with Patrick's appointment in 1990. Some of the resistance come from our own mob, and it's understandable, the resistance to be colonised, the resistance against assimilation. The right to retain sovereignty and the right to say we were here first. But then there's another level of roadblocks. Resentment is our I couch it. It's almost like One Nation thinkers and those like them. One, challenge the right to be different. Yeah, they were here first, but we're all Australians. And the third level of roadblock in my mind is reluctance. We don't have enough political leadership. It's too tricky and there are no votes in it. So, surely it's time for recalibration towards substantial and substantive, they're different, policy and social investment reform. That means not losing sight of this. In my mind, the most cogent, collective articulation of our people's aspirations that I've seen in recent times. And that was the statement from Uluru. Now, owing to Saturday's outcome, we're going to have to reassess. In moving the discourse forward, I would suggest that there are a number of things that we have to avoid and a number of things that we have to enable. The first thing we've got to avoid are the flowery words attached at the start of the Constitution. To my way of thinking, it's like putting Udjuru on an IKEA manual. One's poetry, the other is a highly technical document. The next thing we've got to do is see what lies beneath. What do I mean by that? Well, one person who helped my thinking in this regard is Meg Wheatley, a former academic at Harvard. And Wheatley, people might be familiar, devised this model called the Green Line. And she argues that in organisational change, societal change, whatever level of change, We tend to go to the same levers all the time and hope for something different. We focus on operations, structures, you know, in the bureaucracy, if there's policy failure, oh, well, we'll just have a restructure. And strategies, how many strategies have you seen in this space? They're almost like an annual event. What we're overlooking in terms of what Wheatley argues are below the green line stuff. The roots, relationships, information and identity. So let's now move to CAPER, our role and what we'd like to do next. Next year, 30-year-old. Hooray! And what we want to acknowledge that, and it coincides with the establishment of the Council for Aboriginal Reconciliation, we're envisaging a special year of events. The first one sounds sexy, doesn't it? A metasynthesis. Yay! But an incredibly important body of work. We want to look at a special series of research publications so we can reflect on the last 30 years and see where this space has gone and where it's failed to go. We'll be looking, potentially in this very nice establishment here, to convene a National Policy and Research Conference on Indigenous policy making. We want to look at it through three lenses, 1990 to here, and that is a process of reflection. 2020 vision, where are things at in 2020? A process of critical analysis. And where are we heading to another 30 years in 2050? And that is the concept of futuring. This space is ripe for reimagination. It has to. So we're looking at different models to undertake our research. And one of the more innovative and exciting developments is our relationship with Aboriginal affairs in New South Wales. We are keen to build with them a stronger nexus between practice, policy and research. We're doing this in a number of ways, including the formation of local knowledge exchanges where Aboriginal communities are in charge of their own evaluations. We're doing this through the contribution of a number of CAPER researchers through a very well-established and ambitious Aboriginal affairs research agenda. We're also doing this through my serving over the last 12 months or more as a researcher in residence at Aboriginal Affairs New South Wales. But of course our reimagining has to go to a national level. Why don't we in 2019, with 2020 fast coming up, why don't we yet have in this country a national Indigenous cultural policy? Where, for all Australians, is a national lifelong learning policy? Can we not give thought to and challenge the short-termism and incrementalism that's killing this sector by thinking about things such as a grants commission with a 30-year time frame, because that is more likely to adequately deal with intergenerational inequity. It's not going to happen every year in time for the closing the gap statement in Parliament. We need to think, and I believe there's an opportunity for ANU to think about stronger evidence and innovation in this policy space. Our approach to policy making in this space has to shift on a number of levels. Silos are killing us. Programs have been the feature for 30-odd years and yet little changes. What in fact happens, and I'm aware of one regional town where there are 22 service providers purportedly working in the Indigenous children and family wellbeing space. None of them talking to each other. Shopping around departments for the program to fit the service. So others in other parts of the world are starting to challenge that, including academics out of Stanford who are talking about collective impact and the idea of investing in backbone organisations and getting everyone rowing in the same direction. Too often in this space we're seeing policy solutions which are simply wrong because they're too simple and fail to see the complexity and reality of multiple factors that tend to operate in this space. To my way of thinking, we've got to challenge ourselves to move from linear and predictive thinking to some of the principles of complexity science, which include innovation and investing in networks. What tends to happen in our space is we're keen too often to talk about best practice and then falsely thinking that through replication we can take an initiative from one part of the country or from one Aboriginal nation to another and simply replicate it. It's far more nuanced than that. We still follow the folly of one-size-fits-all thinking rather than investing in nodes within a web of innovation. We talk too often about what works as though it were the ultimate solution and we do that in research. You look at the discourse, for example, around evidence-based policy. Well, the fact is the evidence in our space is rarely settled. So that requires experimentation, innovation, and asking ourselves what's worth trying. Remember, research is not only the establishment of evidence, but it is the place for safe to fail innovation and experimentation. And yet we fail to do that in Indigenous policy. So, in wrapping up, who is Australia? Well, it's up to our imagination. For me, she is past, present and emerging. And to borrow the beautiful words from the Australian Early Years Learning Framework, he is belonging, being and becoming. But in order for that to be realised, we have to be prepared to ask and listen tens of thousands of times over, because each of those voices are worth hearing. Of course, that's a big ask, but surely she is worth it. Thank you.